Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for this week's RBC Heritage. Gonna break down everything you need to know for tomorrow, including a look at the weather, DFS over there for Showdown, and the prop side of things towards the end of this to go over all that info, any of your live questions, so we can go out there and crush the slate. Today, I guess yesterday, however you want to put it, the live stream from last night ended up being a pretty good day. In terms of Showdown, we had a lot of those smash plays there in that 10 o'clock window. We had guys like Xander go off. I had Tom Hoagie in my player pool, a bunch of other guys that were shooting 4 or 5 under par. And a lot of the later starters, though it wasn't a harder scoring average, you didn't have nearly as many ceiling rounds. So at least for me, it ended up about a 3x day ROI-wise. I know a few people reached out to me, told me that they did well themselves. So always great to hear that down in the chat. Let's go out there and run it back for today. In terms of props, was good over there in Underdog. Would have been an exactly break-even day on Prize Picks if it weren't for getting absolutely robbed over there on Sam Burns. He only hit 9 of his 14 fairways. It is clear as day if you go through the shot tracker. Sometimes it's like an intermediate being counted as a fairway that can throw off the shot tracking, but that's not the case here. In fact, the reason why they gave him an extra fairway was because he hit a tee shot into a natural area, took a drop in line with the pin. So he didn't take it 2 club lengths from his shot. He actually took it about 10, 15 yards back so that he could get it back in the fairway for his third shot. So obviously, right, that penalty drop does not mean that he's going to get counted as a fairway, but for whatever reason, that's exactly what the PGA Tour site did. So he got robbed there. That would have cashed us out on one of those Prize Pick slips. The Xander Cantlay birdie slip ended up hitting for us yesterday. So props, Showdown, all that looking pretty good. And then outrights, right, didn't add anything yesterday, but Tom Hoagie is tied for first place. So a little 100-1 outright right there. Let's make it count this weekend. What's going on, Bart? Hopefully you see the notification for it right now. What's going on, Bleedo? It's okay if you're watching it on replay. We still welcome you into the live chat. What's going on, Kevin? What's going on, Philly? Kevin had a good day for Showdown. You'd love to see it. You have Orangutan down there, Rev Cloud as well. Hopefully you guys are having a solid Friday evening. But I want to go ahead and hop on in, get right to business so that we can get back to enjoying our Friday evenings. So in terms of the golf course, played a little bit easier, and we expected that with the pin locations, right? They were set up a little bit simpler than what we had for Thursday, and with the relatively low wind, especially in the forecast, we were expecting them to light this course up. So that's why our props went well, right? That read really helped us there. But in terms of your scoring, you had just ceiling performance galore. Now, having a bogey-free Tom Hoagie and Xander Schauffele was obviously very helpful, both for the main slate and Showdown today. But a lot of your top-end scores, not all of them, right, came from the other starters. So guys like Aberg, right, went off early, especially guys like Cantlay. Obviously, the top 2, right, were in that perfect tee time zone. But further down here, guys like Fitzpatrick, Tom Kim, guys like, let's see, go down a little bit further, Sunjay Im, Akshay Bhatia. I mean, you get the point. Of the top end scores, I'd say about 60%, maybe 65% of them were from the first half of tee times. And even within that, I'd say like a third of them, right, were just in that like 10 a.m. tee time slot, right? Maybe 10 to 11:30 a.m., which is what we were trying to go after yesterday. In terms of breaking down the scoring average, the morning wave only played about 0.26 shots easier, but that's not really a good measure, right? You're taking the whole first half and we're comparing it to the whole second half. And on top of that, you had a lot of ceiling performances from both waves. So, there was a slight bias towards the guys that we took, but I think if you did it properly and avoided some of the super early tee times, you got an even bigger advantage, right? Because guys like Xander, Tom Hoagie didn't tee off until like 10:40 in the case of Xander. I think Tom Hoagie, right, was about a 10 a.m. tee time. Whereas you had guys like a Patrick Cantlay who still had a pretty solid round, but he went off just a little bit earlier in the morning. So it's not like those guys didn't go off. It's not like we didn't have a few of them in our player pool. Just like in Eric Cole, for example, right? Eric Cole shot -3. There were a few other guys that shot like -3, -4 that I played that started later in the day, right? I think Tony Finau, right? He shot -2 with a bunch of birdies today. Was another guy that teed off a little bit later in the day. But a majority of the guys that like broke the slate, right, were the guys that went off in the early wave. So that's always good to see. And with essentially the same forecast for Saturday. That's why I wanted to spend so much time there, right? If we're going to get the same setup, I'd say easy pins again because it's moving day. Well, we have to treat it like almost identically to yesterday. And our strategy for yesterday worked out rather well. And I think we can go out there and rinse repeat it, right? And if you weren't here for the round 2 live stream, our weather edge was to take guys that are teeing off around 10 a.m., right? 10 to maybe 11 a.m. local time, because by then the temperatures should be up to near the max. And also you're going to have low winds. So you can see if you're starting at like 10 a.m. local time, you're going to be finishing your round by like 3, maybe 3:30 p.m. local, where the winds aren't going to be there your entire round. And also your temperatures are almost up there in the 80s, right? So about an hour into your play by 11 a.m. local, you're there at 80 degrees, which is pretty much the optimal playing temperature. So ball's going to be going its optimal distance, right? In round one, I tried to point this out there for Thursday, right? The PM wave played easier, right, out there for Thursday's action. And I think a lot of that was temperature based. So out here for Saturday, we want to make sure we're teeing off when it's going to be like 75, 80 degrees. And then optimally want to be playing when there's next to no wind out there. So that strategy that we talked about for round two is going to be the same way that I'm going about it for tomorrow. So going to be some of those guys that we're looking to take in our lineups. A lot of those players are starting further back, right? Because it's a no-cut event. Because you have a wide range of scores between first and last place, the guys that are going to be teeing off around like 10 a.m. local time are this group of players, right? So let me sort this by score so we can actually get those tee times in order here. It's this part of the leaderboard, right? It's like Pavon, Lowry that are going off with those optimal tee times. A Ricky Fowler, a Nick Taylor, for example, Emiliano Grillo that are teeing off in that Goldilocks zone. These are the players that I think are going to get the best weather, but it's not the only guys I'm going to play, right? If there's some super early starters that are starting with no ownership that you want to take at the pure bottom of the board, then be my guest, right? If you want to play a Nick Dunlop who's going off by himself, then do so, right? I mean, do whatever you want, right? Out there with your lineups, it's your exposure. You're going to make those decisions. But in terms of a weather edge, I do skew towards taking some of these guys towards like 10 to 11 a.m. So in terms of tee times, I didn't just show you, right, who those players are. So at 10 a.m., we have a Sam Burns of Putnam, also a Toasty and Tony Finau. A little bit earlier than that, so closer to the 9 a.m.s is where you have, right, the Nick Taylors, the Englishes, the Ricky Fowlers, so on and so forth. But I would cut it off around like 11 a.m. Eastern time. And that's where you have the Cam Young, Eric Coles of the world. So Cam Young, Eric Cole are, I believe, at -4 through 2 rounds. So let me double check on that. Yeah, I think they're close to that like -4 range. So all these guys from like -4, let's say down to these -2s, -1s are going to be getting perfect conditions. So maybe Lowry, maybe guys like Pavon are going off a little bit early, right, out there for the temperatures. But a little bit further into that leaderboard, when you're getting to these -2s, 3s, and 4s, are the guys that I think have the best playing conditions. So, and the added benefit of taking these sort of players is because they're going off of, 2 sums all off of hole number 1, except for Dunlop, right? He's going to be by himself. These guys are going to have spread out tee times, and they got to move up the leaderboard, right? They're starting 8, 7 shots at least back, right? These guys at -4 of the lead, they've got to go out there and go super low, and they're going to be low owned as well, right? Because they're further down the leaderboard. So they have that incentive to be aggressive. They have the better weather, and they're going to be lower owned. That is the absolute nuts out there for Showdown, right? When you can combine all 3 of those factors. And then on top of that, if you can find guys that just project better than their salary, then you're really cooking, right? Going out there and finding some plays. So we're going to talk through some shots gain metrics here in a bit, right? Talk about some of my top end plays, ownership, all of that. But that's the slate plan when it comes to Showdown, right? Lean into that little bit of a weather edge that we saw out there today, and then play that game theory, which is, kind of going to go coincide, right, with this part of the leaderboard, because just like we had for round 2 Showdown, you'll see it for round 3, and especially for round 4, your chalk's at the top end of the board. Now, round 4, a lot of that's because of placement points, but even for rounds 2 and 3, these are all your highest owned players, right? Even the value plays up here that are -6, -7 or better are all going to be like 10% owned, right? They're all going to get a lot of ownership compared to their peers. If they're a play up top like Morikawa, Aberg, right? They're some of the chalkiest guys on the slate. You say the same thing about Scotty Scheffler getting attention, Cantlay, Thigala, you name it. It's not like you can't play a few of the guys up here. In fact, right, they're in form, right? You probably want to take a few guys up there that are going to be chalky. It's that they're not going to have the best conditions, and they're also not going to get you different, right? So you're going to have some of these chasers. So it's I think shaping up to be a really good Showdown slate because we have all those factors working for us, right? We can take the chasers knowing that they're going to get better conditions. We're also going to get that game theory edge there. And sure, if you want to take some chalkier guys like an Aberg, right? You can see he's in my player pool, right? We're going to talk about Aberg here in just about a minute, give you guys an idea of why I'm playing him despite the ownership. But I'm going to make those limited, right? I'm not going to have a bunch of chalky guys in my player pool, and it's going to be a lot of those mid-tier chasers that I'm looking to play. let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. We got Carmen down there. What's going on? Crown flowing tonight a little bit. It's number 2 right here, so not quite flowing yet, but we'll get there. Henley screwed you so bad on pick 6. You had 2 slips go 5 of 6. Yeah, the 4-man I gave yesterday swept for pick'em. So hopefully you tailed that 4 pick at least, Phil, because all 4 of those hit. Lowry's been disappointing. I agree with you. It's been the putter. So not really a surprise, frankly. Bang just hit the green on a par 4. Oh, wait. It's 5 feet off the green, but it counts. Yeah, dude. So you're talking about like a fairway or a green prop. Yeah, dude. There were so many of those. We had, what was it? Sam Burns. Everyone knows about that, right? We played that yesterday in live stream. But Akshay Bhatia got counted 1 off by a fairway today. That was another prop that got screwed up. Somebody was talking about Lowry yesterday getting counted for a fairway when he didn't hit one. It's been a lot more than just what we had with Sam Burns, right? They've been getting a lot of these stats incorrect. It has to be something with their algorithm because it always happens when there's a penalty shot involved. So it's almost like they're treating the shot like after the penalty as the actual shot, right? So for example, you hit a ball into the water, you take your drop 2 club links and drop it. It's like ShotLink, the algorithm, whatever they've done coding wise to change it, is counting the drop after, right? Shot 2 as where their tee shot lands, right? So whether that's into greens when you're taking a penalty drop, maybe a drop from a sprinkler head, right? And moving it onto the green complex, they're counting that as a green hit, which it's infuriating. I'm done playing them. I've already said, I've told my Patreons, I've made this clear. I am not playing a single green regulation or fairway prop until they fix that. Until I have definitive proof that that has been squared away, and then I'm not going to have to worry about guys hitting props for us and then the PGA site just counting them wrong, because that's all it is. We go hole by hole for Sam Burns. He clear as day hits 9 fairways, but he's counted as 10. Crazy. Hell of a good day. Thanks to your advice. Great to hear that. Got 4th in the 50 cent. Would have had 1st and 2nd if Moore hadn't bogeyed 18. Damn, you were really close to having that takedown. Hey, you got into it. It's just like a golfer getting out here on tour, right? You got to get into contention before you can go out there and bink it sometimes. So now you know what it feels like. Go out there, rinse and repeat that. So love to hear it, Robin. And hey, if any of you guys out there also smashed for today, go ahead and let us know. Those are my favorite messages to read because, again, I like doing well myself, right? Obviously, helps my ROI. It's what I do for a living, but it's greater to see you guys do it as well because that I'm trying to give you guys the knowledge to do it too. So it's great to see that. More Cabo for all the money tomorrow. Not myself. I won't be doing it. He's not one of my favorite players. He's also super chalky there at -11. Like, no, thank you, right? If I'm going to play somebody like chalk, at that kind of ownership, it's got to be for a good reason. And I have a good reason with Aberg. So we'll get to that in a second. Yo, what's going on, Antonio? Long time no see down there in the live stream. Let's get after it today. So let's talk about Aberg. So if I'm going to take chalk, kind of just going off the Morikawa thing, it's got to be somebody that is absolutely striping it. And if you take a look at Ludwig Aberg's shots gained metrics, he's by far the best tee to green player in the field. In fact, he's lapping the field when it comes to shots gained tee to green. So if you just sort it by that category, he's gaining over 3 strokes per round, including 2.9 strokes on approach per round, compared to Colin Morikawa, right, who is losing 0.4 strokes per round. He's luck sacking it with the putter over the first 2 days. So this M. Petrini guy, I'm sure, was being a little bit sarcastic with saying Morikawa for all the money. But in my opinion, Morikawa is about the worst play that you could possibly take. So I'm assuming he knew that. He was just trying to go out there and say something funny. But Aberg, on the other hand, right, has a completely different stat profile, right? Gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, actually losing with the flat stick, where at the Masters, he led the field in shots gained putting, right? So you're talking about a guy who's in form with the flat stick, but the short game was better at a much harder golf course and is doing the sustainable stuff, right? He's going out there, ball striking the ever-living hell out of it. That is what I want to tail after the first 2 rounds. So in my opinion, if you're going to play somebody that's chalk, make it a world-class player that's at least hitting the ball well. Now, there can be an argument to be made to fading all of the chalk up top, right? So just like last live stream, right, all the ownership is not on here, right? I got to keep some of that behind the paywall. But guys like Ludwig are like 18% owned. I've got Scotty at about 20% ownership. Guys like Cantlay, Morikawa getting a bunch of steam themselves. Unless you're completely sold on one of those 4 or 5 players, you should not be playing them for Showdown, right? In fact, I'm only playing, 1 of those 5 players that I just pointed out. So you really have to be sold on them to take them in your player pool. And at least for me, I want sustainable shots gained metrics, right? I want guys that are doing it with the ball striking and they aren't luck sacking it, right? By chipping in or making a bunch of 30, 40 footers. So that's what I've got with Ludwig, $10,700, -10 score. And at 18.6% ownership, it's inflated, but it's not out of hand, right? Because guys like Rory are in it. Xander had that bounce back round. Of course, Scotty, right, is now back in contention. Even guys like Cantlay, Morikawa are drawing away ownership. Nobody here is in that 25-30% range, right? I mean, in maybe some single entries, you might get a few guys that are steamed more than others. But in the large field GPP ownership, I have all these guys between 17 to 20%, right? Which is actually, it might be like 15, we'll say 15 to 20%, because I think Xander is closer to the 15% mark out there for ownership. But all of these guys are within a 5% spread. So pick your guys, right? If there's somebody that for one reason or another is sticking out, then go for it, right? Maybe you really like that Colin Morikawa is luck sacking it with the short game, then play him, right? You can do that, right? It's not like he's 25-30% owned, but just commit to him, right? Play him in 30-35% of your lineups at the very least and get that leverage to the field. So I would pick and choose your spots wisely up top, right? I would really make sure that you vet the players, go through the shots gained metrics, make sure you know what you're getting before you take somebody in 35-40% of your lineups. But yeah, Ludwig Aberg, at least for the purposes of this live stream, is the one guy that I want to point out up there. Down here, the 9Ks, ownership gets more polarized. So while up top, it's a little bit more spread out. It's a little bit even across the board. It's like water, right? It's all getting to the same level. Down here in the 9K range, it's like a turbulent sea, right? It's like there's an absolute storm going on. You have guys like Tommy Fleetwood, for example, who are literally unowned, right? Like 5% ownership out there in large field GPPs. Then on the flip side of things, where you have super chalky plays, like Matt Fitzpatrick, who's nearly 20%, a Sahith Theegala, right? That's nearly 20% himself, compared to a few guys like a Lowry. I guess he's an 8K player, but even guys like a Homa, right? Especially Tommy Fleetwood, they're like half that ownership. So if you're looking to get different, if you're really trying to make a pivot, you can't do it in the 10Ks, right? Everyone's getting ownership, kind of like we had for round two, right? If you guys remember, this same range was getting all the ownership for round two, and that's how it bared out, right, out there for the round two ownership. This 9K range, it feels like it's going to be a little bit overlooked in a few spots. So Tommy Fleetwood, I don't have him on here as one of my highlighted plays, but he is somebody that I'm playing, right? Despite having no form, he's got that super early tee time. In fact, maybe even a little bit too early of a tee time, right, compared to the optimal spot that I'm looking for. But if he's going to be unowned, right, and if I really have some chalky guys that I want to mix into a lineup, he'd be a perfect way to get different. And even if I don't want to play a bunch of chalk, but I just want to get a infinite leverage to the field, right, a sub 5% guy up here in the 9K range, then I throw Tommy Fleetwood into a lineup, right? Maybe it's a high dollar single entry where I know no one's going to have the balls to play Tommy Fleetwood. I know I can probably get him at like 3% ownership out there in like the 222 or something like that. Then that's where I find him especially valuable. So I'm not telling you to play Tommy Fleetwood in your high dollar lineup. In fact, I'm probably not going to play him out there in my large, single entry out here for round three, but it's something I'll consider, right? I'll look at the rest of my build. I'll see if I need to really get different. And if I want to take some chalk out there in my single entry, the way to do it is just by taking Fleetwood, right? If I wanted to start Scotty or maybe, a chalkier like Aberg with my number one, take Fleetwood as my second man in, some chalk down there in the 7-8K range, I can make that work out there in that contest. So like I said, ownership is a little bit less spread out down here in the 9Ks. And some of the obvious names that are getting ownership. Wyndham Clark getting a little bit of steam, but he's definitely not chalky. Like same thing with, Will Zalatoris here, right? The guys that are getting a lot of extra ownership are the guys that are like -11, right? -9, like a Sahith Theegala. Russell Henley, I have as one of the higher owned options down here in the 8K range, whereas Shane Lowry, I've got it sub 10% ownership. So the ownership's very easy to predict, right? Obviously, I have my ownership projections, which really help me out with that. But even without ownership projections, you should be able to get a decent feel, right, for who people are going to play, because they always rally behind the guys that are obvious misprices. They obviously go behind the guys at the top of the leaderboard. And then the third main factor that I think inflates people's ownership out here for Showdown would be the approach stats, right? People look at the shots gained, ball striking, and use that for their analysis. Those three factors are on very specific players, right? It's very easy to point out who those guys will be. And that's why, for example, I think Russell Henley will be chalky. He's got the course history. He's -6, so he's at least playing decently this week. He's also really cheap at $8,400. And compared to some of the other guys around him, like a Shane Lowry, right, you wouldn't want to play because he's really out of form, right? A JT Poston, he's too chalky, right? So a lot of people won't want to play him out there tied for first place. Russell Henley's going to get a lot of steam out there for Showdown. So that's very predictable. The guys like Sahith, Matt Fitzpatrick are no-brainers to go out there and get that steam. Now, you can take a few guys that have the ownership. In fact, I like Matt Fitzpatrick out here for round three. Main reason being is that he's been really good with the approach stats. In fact, off the tee and approach, he's been a gainer over the first 2 days, but his short game, which is normally his best part, right, of his shots gained profile, he's actually been losing over the first 2 days. So as a past champion here before, as somebody that's done it with the short game around Harbour Town, I'll take a chance on him to bounce back. So kind of like Aberg, right? I do have pieces of chalk that I'm mixing in, but I'm being very specific about them, right? I'm making sure that there's a damn good reason, and I'm taking somebody at that ownership, because the ownership pivots, right? This game theory edge is where it's at out there for round 3. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on, and then go through some of the rest of this. Where are we at? You shipped the Minimax today. There you go. You've been money, sir. Love to hear it. And that's the 50 cent, right? So Robin, who was close to shipping that, right, finished in 4th place. You ended up taking her down. So good for you. That's awesome. Or him. I'm not sure. My bad there. Aberg for the marbles. Absolutely. Didn't ship anything but a good day. Still good to hear. Yeah, I know it's Oberg, but I'm going to call it. Yeah, I know. I know it's something else. I really don't care. There are plenty of guys that I mispronounce their name, and I do my best to pronounce guys right. But if I fall into a habit, and that's the case there. I'm not too pressed about it. Kevin says, DK's telling you it's too early to draft round 3. It shouldn't be. You might be looking at the late slate, the late round 3 slate. So make sure you're looking at the regular round 3. All of these are live. That's how I have the salaries. Scotty shot -6 today, and he could have shot -10. Yeah, dude, he hit the lip like 5 times. So 100% agree with that. Just read your tweets about the fairway debacle. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. I mean, I think the tweet is the best place to look at it. I don't want to spend too much airtime on the Sam Burns thing. But yeah, dude, there's like definitive proof that he hit 9 fairways and they still have it as 10. It's crazy. Let's see. However you say it, the guy's a stud. That's what I mean, right? Everyone knows who we're talking about too, right? So if you end up saying it the wrong way and people give you a hard time about it, fuck them. That's what I say about it. Fuck them, right? Waste no time over the ball. You got to love it, right? He's got that quick pace of play. Unlike Cantlay and Harmon, I'm there with you, man. He's I think I'm much higher on him than I think most people are, and that's hard to say, right? After the 2nd place finish at the Masters. But I see this kid as a future world number 1. Like playing like Scotty Scheffler is right now, that's the kind of potential he has. Now, you still have to work to get to that potential. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work, right, to make that happen. But his just pure talent, like his God-given ability is beyond anything I've seen before, right? I mean, his physical abilities are unlike any other golfer that we've had. And that includes Rory McIlroy, right? He's got a more impressive ball flight than Rory. And that was extremely apparent if you watched the first 2 days of coverage, right? They had that group as a featured group. I watched all of them, all of their play. Aberg was the more impressive golfer. So, I know it's a 1-week sample, 2-round sample, right? But I am very high on his future. That's for sure. I got to say his name right at some point, huh? If I'm not high on him though. You feel like some of the prize picks props are inflated. They probably are. I haven't taken a look quite yet, but we'll get to that. And you'll have to point out a few, Gabe, that you like, so I know what to take a look at. So let me know down in live chat what you're talking about. You're looking at the captain. Yeah, that was probably it. Thoughts on Straka? So Straka's playing really well, but kind of like Tom Hoagie and JT Poston, right? All these guys at -11. I don't know if I like them for Showdown, right? They're starting from ahead. They have a little bit more to lose. They're going to be higher owned, right? Because they're starting at the top end of the board. They do have good form though, right? So obviously playing well. That's why, you want to get to them. That's why a lot of people, right, want to get to these guys at -11. But I do worry about them going out there and making enough birdies. Round 3 Showdown's not being about safe, right? If you're playing in one of those big contests, right, out there for round 3, you've got to hit the absolute nuts, right? For somebody to be an optimal play, we're going to have to get 7-8 birdies out of them. And starting at -11, I know that the scoring is going to be good. They're going to have to go low. I'm just a little bit more concerned with the guys starting further back because they're going to take aim in every pin. They're not going to give a shit, right? They're not going to be looking at a pin being like, ooh, if I make a mistake here, that'd be really bad. You're starting at -1, -2. You're like, screw it, man. I'm going full Cebu on this golf course, right? I am hitting it to the pin location in no other distance, right? So I think he's playing well, to answer your question about Straka, but I worry about that mindset, right? Him being aggressive enough to pay off for a large field contest. If you're playing cash, you're playing a smaller field contest, I'm much more okay with Straka. I think he makes more sense there. But if you're playing in like the big GPP, for example, I don't love the play at all. Who sucked today that I want to play for tomorrow? So Who sucked for today? That's a good question. Not a lot of guys sucked today, right? Obviously, scoring went really well. I would say just a few leans. I'll give you my actual take for that here in a little bit. I don't have a definitive take on that, but probably like a Fleetwood, like a Shane Lowry, right? One of these guys that's going off super early. You're going to have quite a few of them that probably fall flat on their face, like Pavon, right? He's even par too. I think he could be a little bit of a bounce back candidate, but the other two, right, are probably going to shoot like 2 over par. So I'll give you an answer towards the end of this, but probably one of those guys. Don't forget that pick 6 later. It's been fire. Just let me know. And yeah, we've been hitting on those like crazy. Actually, I don't think we've given a pick 6 prop here on the stream that hasn't hit. We've hit on every single prop that we've taken on pick 6, the 2 times that we've done it. So yeah, just remind me later on. And you're watching the whole stream, just dropping in quick. Yeah, remind me when you come back, Denny, to go over pick 6. I'm going to try and remember, but let me know. What did it say of Poston's round today? Ball striking was surprisingly god-awful. Yeah, dude, he hit like 9 greens, right? He ended up having 20 putts on the round. I'm not impressed, right? So that's a reason to not like Poston for tomorrow. But like even like it's the ownership of Straka, Tom Hoagie. JT Poston also just the eye test does not look good. So yeah, dude, definitely a little bit of a luck sacked round. Before we move on into our tiers and some of the plays I'm going to talk through, just want to remind you guys of today's sponsor. So the sponsor of today's live stream is Ship It Nation. I'm sure a lot of you guys are already familiar with their tools, but they post content for a variety of different DFS sports. So if you guys have needs outside of playing DFS golf, make sure to check them out for all that content. We're going to talk a little bit more detailed later on about why Ship It Nation has some really good stuff. But you can see on there, right, it's not just MLB stuff, but they have PGA, NBA, MMA stuff that they're posting. I've been a big user of their MMA content over the last few weeks, and a card going on tomorrow. So little, I guess, hint, a little foreshadowing to what we're going to see towards the end of the live stream. But we'll take a look at some of their MMA stuff for sure. But hopping into these plays. So at the top end of the board, we already mentioned Ludwig Aberg. Cam Young really hitting his irons well. Same thing with Will Zalatoris. So we'll go ahead and just throw these two in together. Both Wake Forest players. So that's just a little bit of a coincidence. But at -4, they're at the perfect tee time zone, right? Just to give you an idea, I know that Cam Young has an 11 a.m. tee time, and Will Zalatoris is going off at 11:20. So by that stage of the day, conditions should be a little bit warmer. It's also going to be calm for a majority of their round, if not their entire round, but probably at least like 4/5 of the round. I was 4/3. What am I saying? 4/5 of their round that they'll be playing in slightly less windy conditions. So why not take them, right? And hope that they have a spike putting round. Today, Will Zalatoris just could not make a putt for his life. It was like he was allergic out there to making birdies. And then Cameron Young at $9,600. He had a little bit more luck on Thursday when it came to the flat stick, but out there on Friday regressed back to his crappy putting ways. So $9,600, $8,800 coming in with reasonable ownership. Now, it's not like 15% is low. It's not like he's a pivot out there at that sort of ownership number, but you're also not taking somebody that's super chalky. Will Zalatoris at 12.7%, it's the same thing, right? It's not like he's super low owned, but at the same time, it's respectable enough to take him in like 25, maybe 30% of your lineups, and you're going to have leverage right there. Down here in the 8Ks, I like a Corey Connors. Corey has a late tier course history, and because he's starting at -2, he's also getting one of those better tee times that we're looking for. So he's a little bit earlier in the day than the other 2 players that we just talked about, right? Because he's starting there at -2. But because of the course history and how he's been hitting the ball over the first 2 rounds, he's a player that I'm looking for a little bit of a bounce back. So he's going to need the putter to cooperate, but I've seen crazier things happen than Corey Connors having to spike around. Let's keep going down the board here. We also have Sam Burns at $7,700. Sam Burns was a player that I took today for some of my Showdown lineups, and it didn't really pay off, right? He's yet to have that really big spike round, but what I know about Sam Burns is that he's capable of going nuclear whenever. I think the best example of that was at the Open Championship at St. Andrews. He started off with like a +6 round. Nobody wanted to take him for round 2 Showdown, but then he went out there and shot like -9. Around a soft St. Andrews. So this is a golf course where he could get hot in a hurry, right? He's got the small greens out there. So if he can just hit some greens regulation, he's going to have makeable birdie putt after makeable birdie putt, probably stuff in that 15 to 20 foot range, which is where Sam Burns can get hot. And I think the added benefit here is that he's only $7,700. Somebody like JT is only $7,600 on this kind of slate. So Sam Burns, not very chalky. I've got him at like 9.3% ownership. Somebody like JT, I have it slightly higher ownership, but you could argue that they're worth being chalk, right? Like if Sam Burns was going to be chalkier, I would still be playing him here because they're way too cheap, right? They're $600, $700 below the average salary, which is just criminal, right? I mean, you're talking about a player that's a well above average player in this field. So if you could take somebody like JT Sam Burns and actually increase your average salary remaining, it's just something that I'm going to have a hard time passing on. So even though JT's like not in contention, right? He's -5. He's actually got a pretty good tee time out there for tomorrow. Same thing with Sam Burns, right? He's -3. He's not out of it out there at that score. You know, they're still getting ownership, right? They're still like 16 to 20%, which I thought was a little bit surprising, but it's all based on just how valuable they are compared to their price tag. I like Tom Kim at 7,300, another guy that I think is just way too cheap, right, compared to his talent level. And he's playing pretty well, and I only have him at 14.4%. Part of that's because you have Seamus Power playing well at the same price. Also, guys like a Chris Kirk, Austin Eckroat that are scaring away some ownership. And then even a little bit cheaper, right, Sanjay, right, is going to get some attention. Mackenzie Hughes at -10, Patrick Rogers at -10 are all going to get played as well. So because there's enough guys that are popping down here in the bottom end of the sevens, Tom Kim's not like 20% owned, right? He's 14.4%. You could take him in 30% of your lineups and get leverage. Those are the sort of players I'm looking to get to. If I'm going to take somebody with some ownership down here in the sevens, I'd rather it be a Tom Kim than a Seamus Power. Now, Tom Kim, I've got it higher ownership than Seamus Power, but it's not by much, right? It's like a 3% difference between somebody like Tom Kim and Seamus Power. But in my opinion, Tom Kim is just a much, much better player, right? You're talking about Tom Kim, who's probably a little bit cheaper than he should be, and a Seamus Power at $7,300 that is way more expensive than he probably should be. So in my opinion, he should be twice the ownership of Seamus Power, right? He's too cheap. The other one's too expensive. And instead, they're actually pretty comparable when it comes to the ownership numbers. Down here in the sixes, there's three guys I want to point out. So Sanjay M would be another one. He should not be $6,900. Now, I know he was coming in with a little bit of sketchy form, also an injury that was reported last week at the Masters is where we heard about the Sanjay M injury, but he looks good this week, right? I guess the injury's not holding him back all that much, right? Jordan Spieth, right, was reportedly dealing with an injury himself. Then he went out there and shot like -4 today. So obviously the injury narratives that people work off of a lot of times just blow up in their face. So if you're willing to put that to the side, you're getting a super cheap Sanjay M who's playing well. I mean, he's -7, right, over the first 2 rounds and only 7.6% owned. It just feels absolutely criminal that he's being overlooked. And a lot of that is because you have Patrick Rogers and Mackenzie Hughes here that are stealing away all of that ownership steam. Down here in the sixes, you've got to get bolded a few spots. And my bold play of the day is Cameron Davis. Now, you could say that somebody like Fleetwood, I told you I'm playing him before, right, would be a bold play. I'll even give you Shane Lowry. I'm playing Shane, right? I'm going back to the well after he screwed me for the first 2 rounds. I'm going back to the well on Shane Lowry. But down here in the sixes, right, my wild play is a Cameron Davis, right? Like you've got to take a few shots out there in your lineups. You should not be starting, right, with a Fleetwood and then a Lowry and then a Cam Davis in the same lineup. But taking one of those 3 right out there in a lineup would make a lot of sense, right? You're going to get one of those early starters that absolutely goes off. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be one of those 3 players or one of those early starters that I'm going with. But if you can nail that down, you're going to get somebody at essentially no ownership that could break the slate, right? That could score like 60 fantasy points. So there are a few others that I'm considering down here. Like, I guess I'll just give you guys like a Jake Knapp, for example. I think that he's probably worth a few looks. But even like Alejandro Tosti, right down here at like $6,000, right? He's 2.6% owned. He's the minimum price tag. Why not him going out in this perfect conditions at -3? Why not him to go out there and shoot like -6, -7? So while there's some chalk up top that I'm taking, right? Aberg, I mentioned I'm taking a pretty chalky Matt Fitzpatrick. And that's not even it, right? Guys like a JT, I'm playing at some relatively high ownership. He's like 16% owned because of his price tag. Hell, there's even guys, let me point out a few. There's a few other guys I'm taking at ownership too. There's Aberg I mentioned before. Who else? Let me double check my other tab. I'm sure there's other chalky guys that have my player pool. So let me double check on that. Xander, right? Xander's got some ownership too. Let's see, who else? Russell Henley, right? I'm taking him at like 17% ownership. I've got his ownership way up there, down there in the 8K range. If I'm going to make that work, I'm going to have pivots to mix in, right? So maybe if I'm taking a chalky Russell Henley in the 8K range, that's where I'm using Tommy Fleetwood as a little bit of a different second man in, right? Maybe that's where I'm also taking a 6K pivot that's down there like a Cam Davis, for example, to go out there and offset that ownership. So I think just like yesterday, there's that little bit of a weather edge that we can lean into, right? The guys like -3, -4, I think have the ideal tee times, but you're not only going to take guys that are in that time range, right? I think you're going to get maybe 1-2 early starters that go off, and then you're going to get some of this chalk that hits, right? You're going to get some of the guys that started pretty well that continue that. It's about picking the right guys, right? And frankly, the ones that have the best chance to hit his chalk out there for round 3 are the best players, right? And I know that sounds like I'm dumbing it down too much, but it really is that simple, right? The better players are more likely to succeed. So take the better players as chalk, right? And the ones that you don't want to take, right, are like the Seamus Powers, the JT Postins, the Strakas, the Tom Hoagies that aren't used to being in that situation, right? They're not elite tier players. One of those guys is probably going to go off and shoot like -4, -5, but the rest of them are probably going to shoot like even or -1, right? They're not going to shoot themselves out of the event, but they're not going to be optimal. And you don't want that for your round 3 showdown lineup. So that's it for the player pool. We're going to go through any questions that you have for DFS. Then we're going to talk lineup construction and a little bit about salary and how you can use it. Because I think if you take Scotty for round 3, you can potentially get different with your lineup construction. So Aberg, they have strokes at 67.5. Yeah, that's pretty low. Scotty at 13.5 greens. Yeah, he's a god, though, so I guess that makes sense. And then Thigala and Colin birdies are better. Okay. A few things that we'll circle back on here in a little bit. So, yeah, I definitely think the scoring will continue, but we'll have to see on those. I'll circle back to that. And my part of Ship It Nation now, I am sponsored by them, Todd. So I am not part of their content team or anything like that, but I am partnered with them and doing round 2 through 4 live streams for them every single week. So it's a partnership, but not technically on the team, if that makes sense. Antonio says, if Ann could putt, he would legit shoot -7. Yeah, dude, the shots gained metrics are impressive. Just to show you guys what we're talking about with Benny Ann, let me go ahead, share the data golf feed, give you guys an idea. The shots gained metrics are ridiculous. So let's go to event average to sort this by score because he's towards the top. He's getting 2.5 strokes approach per round, but a half stroke off the tee and losing in both ball striking categories. So he would be a prime candidate of a guy who's chalky to take, right? Somebody that's hitting the ball well, has that sustainable skill set. Now, one thing I'll say about Benny Ann is the guy can never putt, right? It's kind of on brand for him not to make anything. So that kind of worries me a little bit. But yeah, dude, the ball striking stats, next level stuff. Totally agree. Lucas Glover in the sweet spot, local guy, Clemson, and likes the course. And yeah, he's getting inducted into the, I think it's South Carolina Hall of Fame today. So he's got that going for him. They mentioned that at the end of the broadcast today. Let me take a look at the shots gained. So it's down there at -4, the little honey pocket of tee times we're looking for. Surprisingly, not that good on approach. I mean, he's gaining on approach over the first 2 rounds, but could be a whole lot better if we're being honest. I think he's a solid play, right? He's getting ownership. I have to say his ownership's a little bit higher than you'd probably expect. Let me double check and give you an exact number, but I know he was well over 10% out there in my projections. So he's what, 7,200? I've got him at over 13% ownership. So he's the second highest owned player in that range behind Tom Kim. Tom Kim's your highest owned player down there at the bottom end of the 7s. And then Lucas Glover, which, again, it's kind of surprising. He's higher owned than Seamus Power in my projections, actually. I have him higher owned than a Jason Day, for example. He's there at just $100 more. That's the only issue with Glover, is that I think people will play him. It's not really the South Carolina narrative that people are leaning into. It's that he's played well at these kind of courses before, like Wyndham Championship. He was talked up a lot heading into the week. And it feels like people just love playing Lucas Glover now. Thoughts on Jason Day tomorrow? His round was wild today. I think that he's on a good spot on the tee times. Right? He's at -5. He has that going, but he is luck sacking it with the putter. So that is why I'm not taking him. But actually, I think I just gave you fake news. I think I am playing him, but that's why I wouldn't be thrilled about like using him as a core play, for example. I'm playing Jason Day. A lot of it's just talent level based. But yeah, the shots gained metrics, not the reason why I'm taking him. But 10% ownership on a guy that's 7,200, that should probably be like $8,000. I'll take that, right? It's like Justin Thomas, right? Justin Thomas has ownership. He's not playing particularly well over the first few days, but it's Justin Thomas at $7,600, right? There's a time and place for everything out there. So let's hop over to DraftKings, make a few lineups now. If you have any DFS questions, now is the time to get them in, because afterwards we're going to start talking about props. So let's go ahead, go through some of this lineup construction. And if you haven't already smashed that like button, go ahead, hit that before you guys head on out of here. And let's get the numbers up on this. Get this live stream out there to more people. Obviously, we had a lot of winners down there in the live chat. Let's keep that going out there for round 3. So in terms of building lineups, if I'm in a large field GPP, as I always say on these live streams, you've got to figure out where you're going to get different, right? My player pool for this round 3 showdown is a little bit chalkier than what I had for round 2. Now, round 2 was completely contrarian, right? I didn't take any chalk. Round 3, now that we've seen more of these shots gained metrics, we know how these guys are playing, I'm a little bit more likely to take some chalk. So, up top, I really like the idea of taking an Aberg, but if I'm going to get different up top, right, maybe that's where I take a Xander Schauffele instead, who's also playing well with the ball striking stats, but is a little bit lower owned. But we don't have to differentiate up here. In fact, a lot of my lineups are going to differentiate down there in like the 8K range instead. So let's keep Aberg in there, and let's throw Cam Young as our second man in. So 2 guys that have some ownership up top, which now we know, right, we're going to have to differentiate with the rest of our lineup. So maybe not all 4 spots, but we're going to have to be intentional with at least like 2 sub 8% owned players, right? We're going to need to get our product ownership down and down in a hurry here. So what I want to do in the 8K range is, rather than taking like a chalky Russell Henley, right, if I was going Aberg and then maybe Fleetwood is my second man in, maybe we could afford to take Russell Henley as our 3rd spot. But because we're going with a chalkier Cameron Young, we should not be taking Russell Henley in this build, right? That's 3 super chalky players towards the top end of the board. And if you were going to start with these 3, you'd have to get insanely different with your last 3 spots, right? You'd be talking like 3 sub 7% owned players to get your product ownership down. And I usually don't want to make myself that different down low, right? I want to at least have a few guys that are reasonable plays down there in the 7s. So rather than going here and taking a Russell Henley, this is where perhaps you mix in a Lowry, right? Lowry would be an extremely different play down here in the 8K range, but you could make him your spot where you're really leveraging against the field. So we throw him into the lineup down here in the 7s. So rather than having to take a massive pivot down here like a Pavon, right, who's like only even par, this is where you could throw in like a Lucas Glover into this kind of lineup, right? Because you're not taking some super chalky guy up there in the 8s, you can afford to take like a 12% in Lucas Glover. Now, for your last 2 spots, you do want to find some leverage. So I would probably shy away from using a Tom Kim here. If you really wanted to use Tom Kim, you'd probably want to swap out somebody like Lucas Glover, and maybe that's where you throw in, right, a Pavon. So you're still going to need a few pivots. In this lineup, we have Lowry and Pavon as like certified pivots here now. So now for our last spot, we can kind of take whoever the heck we want, right? Now, I would still avoid Patrick Rogers because I don't think he's anywhere near worth the ownership that he's getting, or because he's there at -10. But somebody like a Grillo, if you wanted to throw an Adam Hadwin out there at $6,800, all of that would work for that kind of lineup. So it's all about being intentional about getting different. And before hitting submit on any combination that you're going with, just double checking, right? Is my product ownership going to be low enough, right? Am I talking about a lineup that's going to have enough leverage to the field? And if you can say that, right, then you should be good to go for those large field contests. If I was playing in single entry, I would probably build the same way, right? I wouldn't have that much of a different mindset, except I would really like Tommy Fleetwood. So I know we had the question about the guy who sucked that I think is going to play really well for round 3. It's Tommy Fleetwood, and part of that is mindset. Fleetwood's a choker. You've seen that in crunch time and like all of his PGA Tour contentions, right? Anytime he gets up there towards the top, he's crumbled towards the end. Now that he has nothing to play for, this is the kind of spot where he smashes, right? You get him at a hidden giggle. You get him at like an exhibition event, right? This guy goes off. You get him on the DP World Tour where he doesn't have that pressure, right? He's a multiple-time champion on that side of the pond. He kills a field. He's like the best player in every field that he plays in. Over there on the DP World Tour, as long as Rory's not there, he's like the best player in the field. Give me some Tommy Fleetwood in single entries. No one's going to play him. It's the idea, right? I play in the higher stakes stuff, right? I don't play in no $5, $12 single entries. $5, $12 stuff, people will play Tommy Fleetwood, right? Because like even if you're a casual playing DFS, it's $5 to $12. Even serious pro players in a $200, $500 lineup, they just don't have the stones, the testicular fortitude to go out there and play a Tommy Fleetwood out there in that kind of contest. And knowing that, I'll play him then. If you're not willing to take that chance, I will, because I know that golf's a crazy sport. I know that there's a lot of variance out here in an 18-hole sample size. And to add a little narrative that at least convinces me to play him, right, I'll take him. Fuck it. If I could talk myself into playing him at all, I'll take a guy at like sub 5% ownership. Let's see. For cash, I guess. I know people ask about cash sometimes on here. If I was entering a cash lineup, I would make it balanced. So I would not be taking Scotty because of the price tag. It's just a little bit too high in my opinion. I wouldn't hate like a Fitz. I wouldn't even hate starting with like a Cam Young and then just peppering this 8K range because you have a lot of quality players down here. Heck, you can even go with like 3 9K guys. Like this 8 9K range has a lot of quality guys that are playing some solid golf. So like if you wanted to take those two and then throw in like a Thigala, down here in the 7K is like JT is like a must play for cash. Tom Kim is like a must play for cash. And I would probably try and squeeze in like a Sam Burns too, just because he's way, way cheaper than he should be. These are the kind of guys that I'd be playing out there in a cash lineup. The obvious misprices, the guys that are playing pretty well to this point, you could say that about, maybe not with Burns. So I would prioritize these two guys at the bottom. But this is the kind of cash lineup that I'd be building. It'd be a little bit more balanced than what I'm used to seeing. You're just trying to jam in these price inefficiencies. Like even guys like Fitzpatrick, Cam Young, I think have a fair price tag. I'd say that Cam Young, maybe it's a little bit more fair with somebody like him, but you could throw in like a Xander at 10.6 if you wanted to. You could always go a little bit cheaper, right? And throw in like a Zalatoris at $8,800. Then you're down at 8,100 remaining. You could take like Tony Finau as like your last man in. Like obviously cheapest guy would still be Tom Kim, but what a lineup you could have out there for cash. So I don't normally play cash, but I kind of like the look of that build, and I might enter one now. If I like the way that cash looks, if I find an edge out there for cash, normally it's like the big weather slates that I'll go out there and play cash. I'll do it, right? Like if I know that the AM is going to play 2 shots easier than the PM, or even like a shot and a half, give me all the cash lineups I want because I'll just stack those AM guys, print lineups, and print money right out there for Showdown. But boy, oh boy, I like the look of that one. That's for sure. What are my thoughts on Cam Young? So I touched on it a little bit earlier, but he looks really good with the approach play, and the putting round 2 was a little bit shaky, right? Which I'm willing to forgive a player for on an 18-hole sample. Round 1, he was making a bunch of putts. So I like him. I think he's got bounce back in him, right? I don't think it's guaranteed, but he definitely has it in him. And yeah, I did touch on him earlier, so if you want my full take, feel free to go ahead and scroll back. That'll give you the little Spark Notes version out there right now. How is Grillo looking for an under 7? Under 70, I'm assuming. You'll have to let me know. It's under 7 what? Yellow says you crushed DK pick 6 last night. Got any plays from round 3? Yeah, we'll touch on those after we go through Underdog and Prize Picks. So yeah, I see a lot of people must have tailed that slip last night and hit. So yeah, we'll run it back. Your main 5 guys shooting 5 under, 6-man is Rose. Oh boy. It's always that one guy, huh? That goes out there and tanks your lineups. I have a lot of lineups that are looking really good with Lowry, right? As like the one guy who sucks, with like a bunch of 6K guys that are like -7, -11 through the first 3 rounds. And then Tommy Fleetwood too. I'll have like 5 guys that are all like -8 or better, and then fucking Tommy Fleetwood. So I feel you on that. Under 7K play. Gotcha. So in terms of favorite under 7K, number 1, Sanjay $6,900. Number 2, and it's not really a close number 2, it'd be Emiliano Grillo. But yeah, my favorite play under 7K is for sure Sanjay M. So let me go ahead and bring up my projections, or at least stat averages from round 2, so we can start talking about props. So just 1 second while I bring those up, and hopefully it's the last screenshot that I have to make it a little bit easier to find this on here. So just 1 second while I do that, yes. All right, that should be it. Yep, there it is. All right. So I have the stat averages from round 2. And frankly, I think these are going to be very similar to what we have for Saturday. So if you were just here for DFS, that is all we're going to cover on that side. If you have any questions for DFS, I'll still go through them down in chat. But that's it for all the curated content there. So if you were just here for all of that, best of luck for your round 3 exposure out there for moving day. Smash that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe so you don't miss the round 4 stream. Going to be running it back out there for tomorrow evening. So make sure to stop by for all that content for Sunday. And the last thing I'll say about that, if you're just here for DFS, is make sure you go out there and take down a contest or 2 for me, right? I know we had that success out there for round 2, but I'm going to run it back out there for moving day. And in terms of our prop averages, so now getting into what we're going to look at for Underdog and Prize Picks, went pretty well today, right? And a lot of that was because of our course read. So I want to double check on these pin locations. Let's see if they posted them yet. I'm assuming, yeah, we do have them out there for the RBC Heritage. We're going to have to go through these before we enter anything, because obviously us going through that yesterday was a big deal. It's a big reason why we had the day that we did. So scoring average was easier than round 1, despite having the same weather. All of that was pin related, which again was why it was so important that we went through those. Birdie average went up just like expected, and your bogey average went down right out there from round 1 to round 2. So no matter which metric you looked at, pretty much everything got easier except for greens and regulation. So greens and regulation went down to 11.42 per round. Your fairways were there at 9.3. So those went up just like the other stats increasing. Greens and regulation going down, it has to be because of the pin locations, right? There were actually a few that were close to the sides. Like just off the top of my head, hole number 3, for example, there were people hitting it to like 15 feet that were in the fairway because of how tucked it was to that left side. So I think partially that was pin related, but conditions wise, everything was easier out there for Friday. So I think these are going to be pretty similar to what we see out there for Saturday. But the one thing we want to take a look at are these pin locations. So that's what we're going to do next. And on here, you can see I have band in parentheses for greens and fairways. If you didn't hear earlier, if you didn't see my Twitter, I guess I'll just show you guys now. Sam Burns only hit 9 fairways today. Okay, so I'm not even entertaining questions about greens and fairways because you should not be entering them under any circumstances. But this is what happens when you bet fairways or greens out here on PrizePicks or Underdog. So Sam Burns in round 2 apparently hit 10 fairways. That's at least what they're claiming right out here in the PGA site. Well, tell me how that's possible when he has all of these misses. So hole 2, he hit it in the left over there. I know it looks really close, but he hit that like 2 yards into the fairway. They marked this as a fairway miss as soon as it happened early in the round. So this was marked as a fairway miss, and it is a fairway miss, right? So that's one miss right there. Next miss was on hole number 9. He went for the green off the tee like expected. It's part of the reason we took the prop yesterday, and he hit it into the fairway bunker. So that's miss number 2. There's no refuting that. And they did mark that as a miss on Shot Tracker. So 12 is the next miss. He hits into the trees. Pretty hard to refute that one, right? If it hits into the fucking trees. And that, again, was also marked as a miss. So that's 3 misses that they have marked down. Now, here's where things go sideways. So hole 16, and I'm just going to bring it up on Shot Tracker because we're going to need this when we're going hole by hole. And hole 16, he hits it into a bush, natural area, right? And has to take a drop because it's in like a literal palmetto bush. So he goes in line with the pin. You can see the pin over here, right? This is where he's dropping from, like over here, right? He drops in line with the pin into the fairway, and this is obviously a missed fairway, right? They marked this as a fairway hit over there on the PGA site. So you get to hole 18, so this should be the 4th miss, right? And 18, the easiest fairway to hit in all of golf, he manages to miss, right? So I didn't think that was going to matter what happened on 16 because I thought for sure he's going to hit 18. I mean, you'd have to be an absolute dunce to miss 18 fairway, but he nuked it through the fairway somehow. He's like one of the only players all tournament to do that. And because of that, right, you can see it's a clear miss. They marked this as a miss over there on Shot Tracker. Because of this mistake on 16, Burns went over his prop and screwed us for that slip yesterday. So it should have been both a slip on PrizePicks and Underdog that we hit. It was only an Underdog because of this bullshit ass mistake. So this has happened before. I posted this on Twitter, right? Tried to get the information out there to as many people as possible. And I had 3 people DM me with different players that had this happen to just this event, the first 2 rounds. On my Discord, I had 2 other people reach out about different players that had this happen, including Shane Lowry fairways round 1, which also was decisive between a player hitting and missing. So there's something going on here, right? It's either this PGA algorithm is not handling these penalty shots correctly, or the person that's entering the scores is doing them incorrectly. And I'm not saying that's malicious, I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose, but those mistakes are having big impacts, right, on how these are getting scored out there. So if I was a prop site, frankly, I would stop offering these props if I knew this was happening. Now, they might know it's happening and just not care, right, because nothing's going to get done about it. But at least for me, I am not looking at those boards. So when you see band over there, I mean that band. I am not playing green regulation or fairway props, even if they're like two fairways offered, like 2 greens off. I'm just not doing that. There's absolute horseshit what ended up happening today. And I can't even enter the props myself, right? I'm down here in Florida. It's banned down here in Florida. I didn't even lose money because of that today, but it just pisses the ever-living hell out of me that they do that kind of shit and get away with it, right, out there in these unregulated sports books. Obviously, my subscribers, right, that was a play that I gave out to my people, and they ended up missing on it. So that's where I end up empathizing and feeling really shitty about it. So I hate to have to do that whole spiel, but that's why I am not going to entertain questions about greens or fairways, because it is a waste of time. And I think that you're literally throwing money away if you do that. I can't see wanting to play that, knowing that they're not tracking them correctly. Like if it happened to me, it can happen to you. Let's put it that way. It's not like it's that wild of a thing to happen. So let's go through these pins real quick. Let's see if there's any things down in chat. What's going on, Mark? Calling over 4.5 on Prize Picks. You liked it a lot yesterday and he hit. We'll have to take a look. I think the pin locations are important, right? We're going to have to take a look at the pins before we say anything. You don't know if we talked about Rory, but what are my thoughts? So he actually hit the ball well in approach today, which is kind of surprising. Did not do that out there for round one. I'm like a 6 out of 10 on him, right? I think he's playing well enough that you could play him. But at the same time, there are guys around him that I like a little bit more. So like even a Scotty, right? Like if I'm going to spend up there and take that salary, I'd almost rather have Scotty than Rory. But I'm okay with him. He's not the worst play. Sure, man. I have no problems with you using my logo. In fact, if you reach out to me on Twitter, I'll send it to you. I'll make it a little bit easier so you don't have to like screenshot something and crop it. I'll just send you the direct file. So it's not something that I have people do. It's not like I ask people to go out there and fly my logo. My whole thought process with that, and I know there are websites that do so. I respect that. People love having a community, but I like when people celebrate their own wins. Like when they use my analysis, I'm not wanting people to just go out there and play the exact player pool that I am. It's much more about the process, giving people ideas of how to attack the slate so that they're going out there and winning them for themselves, right? So I know a lot of sites out there will be like, oh, use our logo, get free giveaways, so on and so forth. I feel like that kind of takes away from the pride, right, of having a takedown, right? Like, go out there, celebrate. It's your takedown, right? Like, I know people down in chat were saying, like, thank you for the advice, so on and so forth. Glad to give you the advice, right? Glad to help you out, but you did that, right? You had to go out there and build your lineups. I'm sure you took guys that I didn't take, right? Vice versa. You probably faded some guys that I ended up playing. And that's the way it should work. That's the way all DFS should work. So, yeah, you can totally do it if you want to, Kevin. There are a few people that down my Discord that do that themselves just because they want to show support, that thing, so on and so forth. But I'm a little bit shy to say that just because of, again, I like people to celebrate their own wins, right? I think that's something that is kind of rare out here these days. And no matter what site you're a part of, even if you're taking picks from another site and using them, right, you have to take some pride in it because you're not going to be 100% tailing their pool. And if you are, then I guess fly their flag, right? If you're 100% tailing somebody's player pool, fly their flag all you want. But that's all I'll say about that. So hole number one, let's go through these pins. So what we want to do here is we want to compare them to round two. So round two, I'd say the pins are about as easy as they could possibly get. So for round three moving day, usually they do set them up pretty easy, but let's see how they compare to round two. So hole number one, they've got it on the right side compared to the left. I would say there's little to no difference between this pin over here on the middle right and compared over here to the middle left. So that'll be a neutral. It's not easier and it's not harder. Hole number two is a front left pin location. This one's going to be easier than what you had for days 1 and 2. Day 1, it was like middle right over here, just over the bunker. Obviously, round 2, there in the back right portion of the screen. Now that it's in the front side, it's a little bit more reachable in 2. Plus, these ups and downs over here from the left side of the green are a lot easier to come by. And the reason why I mentioned the ups and downs from the left side of that green is that the main issue here off the tee are these trees to the right. So I zoomed back here to the tee shot to show you this. If you miss over here to the left, these trees aren't really an issue, right? Unless you miss to the left of this bunker and you really hit it off the planet, you're going to have an avenue to this greenway up here, right? Whereas if you miss to the right side over here, you got this big tree to the right, which oftentimes forces players to hit it to the left side of the green over here. So you saw that with Scotty Scheffler. You saw it with Jordan Spieth today. Now, they didn't get it the whole way quite up to green side over here, but they were aiming at this left side, right? And trying to hit it up as close to the green as humanly possible. To a middle right pin or even a back right pin like we had for round 2, that's a pretty hard up and down, right? It's a longer pitch shot. It's like 40, 50 yards. This front pin over here is a lot shorter chip, right? And if you just miss it just off the left side of the screen, you can still chip in for an eagle, right? With that sort of pin location. So hole 2 is going to be a whole lot easier than what we had for today. Hole 3 is a back right pin location. It's back here in this little back right corner. It's definitely harder. It's going to play harder, longer, I should say. Obviously harder, right? I just said that. But yeah, it's going to play longer than what we had for round 2. But it also brings these bunkers a little bit more into play. So we have one easier pin so far, one that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Hole 4 is a front middle pin. So it's over here towards this section. It does bring the water more into play, but there's a little backstop that you can use, and it's going to play to a shorter distance. So I would say hole number 4, you're going to see more birdies, but you're also going to see more doubles as players end up hitting it short and into the water. So a little bit of risk reward there. Pretty neutral, all things considered, though. Hole number 5 is a back left pin location. So this is a par 5. that is already kind of hard to reach in 2. Now, if you can execute the shot and get there in 2, having a back pin location gives you more room, right, to run the shot up. But it's going to play longer for shots that you have to get up and down on, right? So if you end up missing like short right of the screen, like a lot of players end up doing at hole number 2, it is a harder up and down than what you had there for round number 2. So it's, the first par 5, I'd say was easier, right, than what we had for round 2. This one I would say is slightly harder than what we had for round 2. So that's 2 holes that are harder and 1 hole that is easier so far. Hole number 6 is a front pin. So this will be easier. It's going to play shorter. It's already a short par 4 to begin with. And with a wedge in hand, you're probably going to see a lot of players get close there. So 2 easier, 2 harder so far. Hole number 7 is a back right pin. So it's going to play longer. And it's away from the hazards at least, right? You do have this little chipping hollow to the right, this little fairway area that's going to come into play. I would say pretty neutral here. So it's going to play to a longer distance, but it is a lot further away from the trouble. And you don't have to worry about this front left tree as much. And that can take a ball and take it into the water, believe it or not. So 2 easy, 2 harder than a bunch of neutrals. Hole 8 is a back pin. So it's back here in the back left. And this is undoubtedly hard, but not harder than today, right? The pin location was still in the back out there for round 2. So that has to be neutral, right? It's within like 5 paces of where it was out there for Friday. Hole number 9 is a front middle pin. This is the easiest pin location that you get on this entire hole. And because it plays downwind and it is drivable, anyone that can hit it into this front bunker is going to have a short bunker shot and a pretty easy up and down. The other byproduct of it being in the front middle here is if you miss to the left or to the right side, you're going to have a lot of green to work with to get up and down. And ideally, I'd say missing it to the left is best, so you don't have this little brow to work with on the right side. There's a little downslope that can make it a little tricky to get up and down if you miss over here to the right side. But if you miss over here to the left or over here in this bunker, really anywhere, it's going to be really simple up and down to that front pin location. So these are pretty classic moving day pins. We'll have to see what the back 9 looks like, but honestly, I don't think it changes our opinion of the golf course very much, at least so far. So hole 10 is a back middle pin. This will be harder than what we had for today. So it looks like there's going to be more bogeys. It definitely looks like there's a lot more risk reward going on. Hole 11 is a little front pin, so this will be easy, just like it was today. So that one's pretty neutral, though, because it was easy today as well. Hole 12 is a front pin. This will be a whole lot easier than this back location. So, yeah, there are some easier pins here, too, though. So, like I said, it's a pretty classic moving day slate. Like, you got your easy pins, you've got your harder pins in pretty easy scoring conditions. So I think you're going to see a lot of birdies. So next up, you have hole 13. It's over here towards like this middle left. You have this bunker that's going to come into play quite a bit. Also, this little downslope that's going to make it close to harder to get close to that pin location. So yeah, I'd say that one's a little bit more tricky. 14 is a front pin. So it's a shorter par 3. But it is going to bring the water more into play. So I'd be surprised if they play this to its full length out there at hole number 14. So if they shorten this up, it could be a birdie hole. But just like hole 4, right, I think you're going to see more birdies at hole 4, the first par 3. But it also brings that water more into play. So you're going to see more bogeys and more double bogeys as a result. 15 is a back right pin. So another par 5. This is, I would say, the hardest pin location at hole 15. So that's another harder par 5. 16, let's look at that one. So 16 is a front left pin. It's over here towards this section. It looks easy on paper. The harder part is, though, is that this tree to the left kind of blocks you out a little bit. So I think you're going to see more drivers at hole 16 because of that pin location. So you can try and get past that tree, and also so you don't get blocked out by that. Hole 17 is a par 3. Let's look at that pin. So it's a back left pin. That's a pretty tough one. Right, brings this bunker to the left into play. Also, any miss over the green could be trouble in a penalty area. So that's another tougher one. And then hole 18 is here to the right side of the green. It's the easiest pin on this hole location, but like 16 is pretty tricky, right? 17 is a pretty tricky pin location too. I think it's going to be a pretty fun round. I think you're going to see a lot of variance out there. I don't think you're going to see a lot of pars from players. I think the birdie average is going to be comparable to round 2, right? It's probably going to be around like 4 per round, I would imagine. But your bogey average, this is where I think you're going to see the difference. I think it's going to be well over 2 out there for round 2. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was between 2.25 to maybe even 2.5 bogeys per round. So with that being said, that means that the scoring average is probably going to be closer to like 1.5 under par, and you're going to see conditions play slightly harder out there for Saturday. So Today was about as easy as the golf course could possibly get. Wind conditions are going to cooperate, but based on what we saw for these pins, I don't think they're as straightforward as some moving days might be, right? Like at the Players Championship, for example, they really set up the course easy for moving day. You even saw that at the Masters, right? They tried to make that a little bit easier out there for Saturday, even with those windy conditions. The RBC Heritage, it doesn't look like they're doing that quite as much. So it's a good thing we went through that so that we know what to look for when we go through these prop boards. Let's do that. Let's bring up the prize picks board over here too. So they've got guys at 4.5 up top, 5.5 Scotty. Oh boy. Of course they do. And this is my first look at the board. So it's going to take me some time to digest this. But before we hop on out of here, I'll at least give you guys one slip to work with. And then the rest I'm going to post over there in Patreon. So if you have any questions about specific props, let me know. And I know we had a few mentioned down there in chat. So let's go ahead and circle back on those right now. So there was a comment further back by Gabe that I want to touch on right now. So Gabe was pointing out Aberg at 67.5. So let's start with that one. So Aberg 67.5. What I want to do real quick is I want to bring up Draftkings and see if they have anything to compare to. So we're going to do Draftkings and also bring up FanDuel. So Draftkings first. Let's see if they even have anything up. Which it might be, no, they do have them up. Okay. So FanDuel, let's see if they have anything up. Now, FanDuel is usually slacking a little bit, so they probably don't have them up yet, but you never know. Maybe their lines maker's on his feet for once out here in a Friday, I should say. Getting ahead of myself with the days of the week. All right, so let's compare to the sportsbook odds real quick, and I'm assuming that they're going to be higher than the 67.5, but let's see if I'm wrong here. So, yeah, they have Aberg at 68.5 and juiced under. So, yeah, the sportsbook odds aren't great out here, right? They're going to have these guys higher than where they have them on the Underdog and Prize Picks. So to give you an idea, right, they have them at that same number, also juiced minus 150. I agree with you that I think Aberg's going to go low, but I wouldn't call them a soft projection. So unless you're talking about taking the over, I think the projection's pretty fair. And then Thagala and Colin birdies. So I know they had Colin at 4.5. Somebody mentioned that down in chat. And they also have Thagala at that same number. If the pins were easy, I'd be all over it, right? If the pins were easy, I'd be like, okay, right, gain a birdie to the field. I'd feel pretty comfortable with it. But the pin locations aren't nearly as easy as what I was hoping for. So let me look at Underdog. Where do they have the same guys on Underdog at? So Collins at 4.5. It's the same across both sites. They have Ludwig at 70. That same projection, as to say 67.5 across both sites. Scotty's 0.5 lower. They do have Thagala also at 4.5 birdies. If I'm going to be frank, guys, I feel like this is a bit of a trap board because they posted everyone at the same projections. These props all went over today. They all went under on strokes, but the pin locations look a little bit harder, right? It's going to get a little bit firmer and faster out there for moving day, especially if they avoid some of this overnight rain, which they were forecasting yesterday, but now it looks like the forecast is pretty clear. Let me double check on that. I'll just check out Hilton Head Island real quick in terms of weather. I don't think they're going to get that storm. And if they don't get that storm tonight, this course is going to get a little bit harder. So let me see. Yeah, there's no rain in the forecast anymore. They're not supposed to get it until it looks like tomorrow night. They might get a little bit of a storm before Saturday's round. But for moving day, I'm not as sold that this is going to play so much easier. So if I'm looking at anything, I think I like fades. And that's a dangerous thing to say, right? After the kind of round that we had today. But especially based on the pin locations, that's the read that I'm getting here. And based on projections, you have a few guys that are much lower than where they had them for the round 2 board. There are going to be spots of value to get to here. So over here in Underdog, the first thing that sticks out to me are maybe these bogey props. It doesn't look like they have anything up for bogey props over here on Prize Picks, but let's reverse engineer their bogey props a little bit. So they have Ludwig at, 3.5 under par. That would be a 67.5 line. They have him at 3.5 under par, despite being at, and I guess they don't have his birdie line up, but he'd probably be at 5 birdies, I'd imagine, if they gave him a birdie line. So that's at least 1.5 bogeys right there. Let's do it with the other guys. So Max Homa, they have at 4.5 birdies, and his strokes line is at 2.5 under par, right? So if you go back, just calculate that. That's at least 2 bogeys per round. So they've got him at about 2. Now let's keep doing this here a little bit. So they have Fleetwood at 4 birdies, his strokes line at 2.5 under par, right? So they've got him at 2.5 bogeys, right, out there per round. There's probably some value to taking some fades. And I don't hate the idea of fading guys that are just out of it. So I know I kind of like Tommy Fleetwood for today, especially like for DraftKings, right? I like him for those kind of purposes where he's unowned, but like over 1.5 bogeys, like if he's really out of it, right? He's out of form, like that doesn't feel like a horrible spot to take. Let's see. Let's keep going through this a little bit. So I have to say it's a perplexing prop board because if it weren't for the pin locations, I'd be all over some of these unders on strokes or overs on birdies. But I'm very tentative after seeing the setup. Let's see any other comments we had about props. Let me see. Yeah, we're gonna do the pick six stuff, so we'll take a look at that. I guess before we do the underdog and prize pick stuff, let's see where the DK pick six has everything. Let's see. Willie Z sold you today. Yeah, he got me too for the fairway stuff, the green stuff. Yeah, he was another guy, by the way, Mark, who ended up getting counted wrong. He hit 12 greens today, not 11. Now, 12 is still less than 12 and a half, right? He wasn't going to hit that prop for us, but they marked it wrong. It was another one of the guys where if you just go shot by shot, he hit 12 greens and they counted it as 11, which is ridiculous. You're too humble. You're flying your flag because you work hard and deserve it. I appreciate you, Kevin. Yeah, let's go through the pick six stuff real quick because these prop boards and underdog and prize picks are trash. It's not like I don't want to bet them. I'm still going to, but they're fucking trash. So let's bring this up. So pick six, let's bring out the PGA Tour. And oh boy, yeah, they got these guys a lot higher than what they had them for today. Ugh. All right, so they have a bunch of guys at 4.5. So yesterday they had a bunch of guys at 3.5, so it was easy to find overs. Now they still have a few at 3.5, but you don't have that many options this time, right? It's not all the guys that are also just really sucking over the first part of this event. In terms of strokes, they look a little bit higher compared to some of the other sites, at least on a few guys. Ugh. Yeah, guys, I'm not going to lie. These prop boards, not it. They're not my favorite boards I've ever seen my entire life. Like yesterday, it was really easy, right, to find these props for pick six. I think it took us about 2 minutes, and we ended up finding some locks. Doesn't look like it's going to be like that today. So let's see what we can do. Oh. I think the scoring average for what it's worth is going to be around a 69.5. And that's where they have some of the average tier players. So, yeah, based on what I'm seeing here, guys, I hate to say this, but I don't want to enter anything. I guess a Wyndham Clark over 67.5. That's too low of a projection. I guess I could get behind that. Even a Thigala, that's too low of a projection. I guess I could actually Aberg 66.5. That is way too low of a projection. So I can get behind playing that. And I still like Aberg today, right? I'm playing him in Showdown. I mentioned that before, but you have to shoot -5 to cover, right? And this is a 50-50 prop. This isn't us taking him as in DFS lineups, right? And just hoping that he pays off. So let's take that for strokes. For birdies, maybe we can find some unders at 4.5. Like Denny. Why the hell is Denny at 4.5 birdies? What is Patrick Rogers strokes? I want to see where they have good old P. Rogers at. At 68.5. I'd almost rather fade him for birdies or better out there for that. So they don't get you for court. So I don't play pick six guys, right? It's not legal down here in Florida. Do they screw you for correlation or no? Right? I believe they don't, right? Out there for any sort of correlation. So we could take 5 fades if we wanted to and get away with it, right? I just want to double check on that before I give you guys 5 fades and it pays you nothing. But I'm assuming that you can get away with it here. I like those 2 unders a lot. Those 2 strokes lines are definitely quite a bit off themselves. Let's find one more. Let's give you a 5-man out there and call it a day for pick 6. It's got to be a strokes fade. 67.5. Do you have any scrubs? Not really. Wyndham Clark's not a scrub, but he just doesn't really fit this golf course. All right, we'll go with these 4. We did a 4-man yesterday, right? And it still paid out pretty well. Go ahead and go with these 4. These are 4 obvious misprices, in my opinion. Aberg should probably be at 68 strokes. That's where I'd project him if I was underdog or prize picks and setting my own lines. Wyndham Clark, I'd have it 68 strokes too. Now, over here on prize picks, right, they have Wyndham Clark at 68.5. right? So that's an entire stroke higher. And then Aberg over here is also an entire stroke higher. So you're getting a stroke discrepancy on those two players. Denny McCarthy and Patrick Rogers, I believe, are at 4 birdies over here. So let's double check. Yeah, they have Patrick Rogers at 4 birdies. Who was the other one? Yeah, Denny McCarthy, right? We also got at 4 birdies. So you're getting a discrepancy in all these cases here. In an entire stroke discrepancy over here for a PGA prop is quite a big deal, right? It's not like a 1 yard discrepancy for football. That doesn't mean jack shit, right? In golf, even a 0.5 discrepancy matters. So if you're not a big golf bettor, you may say like, oh, who the hell cares, right? About that 1 stroke discrepancy. It means a whole lot more when you're playing on this kind of sport. So if you do it long enough, you'll see what I'm talking about, like how many times you get close to hitting or missing by 0.5. That'll be it over there for the pick 6. So the reason why I found it so easy to take these props, right, is because I think it's going to play a little bit harder, right, than what some of these other sites are projecting. And pick 6 was even more optimistic on these players than what we had on the other sites. So if we're going to find value over here, especially finding those in pick 6, I think it gives me some good perspective. It's going to be finding fades, but finding the right type of fades, right? We need to find players that are out of form, right? That aren't playing sustainable golf that we can go out there and take a stance against. And the unfortunate part is that I think that these are even too optimistic, but compared to the pick 6 lines, right? Like these are like by far the worst that I've seen so far. Let's see what we have in Underdog. I haven't gone completely through this board yet. So they have a bunch of guys at 1.5. And frankly, like a Wyndham Clark at 1.5 bogeys is like, that's a spot that I would consider taking over for sure. JT has not been as good at bogey avoidance as you'd hope for. But then they also have guys like a Sibu at 1.5, like some of these like mid-tier players. I don't hate the idea of us trying to find some bogey props to take and just trying to find guys that are maybe luck sacking it with the tee to green play. So what we're going to do here to find these fades is we're going to try and find guys that aren't playing very well with their shots getting tee to green. So we want guys that are maybe losing. So Tom Kim is actually losing with his shots getting tee to green, where he's gaining a bunch with the flat stick. He made 2 bogeys today. In round 1, he only had 1 bogey on the round. That feels like he could be in a little bit of an unsustainable sort of skill set, right? So he's only 0.9x for the over, but he's for sure somebody I'd consider. So a little bit annoying that he's 0.9x, but maybe we still take it. You see, so his strokes line is minus 155 towards the over, and on FanDuel, he's probably the same thing. Yeah, minus 150 odds. So let's go ahead and just take that instead, right? Take a prop that's going to be minus 150 juice and go with it in that direction. So let's start with that. What we're trying to do here, by the way, by taking these fades is find guys that, again, are doing it unsustainably. So the reason why we're fading Tom Kim is he's losing off the tee, right, and not doing that much with the approach play, right? He's gaining over the first 2 rounds, but he's not doing anything crazy there. Who else can we say is not doing it tee to green? That at least has props that we can bet on, right? So Jason Day would be another, right? He's gaining a bunch of strokes with the putter, but is losing a bunch with the approach play, over 2 strokes per round, in fact, over there with shots gained approach. So maybe we fade Jason Day. So let's see if he has any odds posted. So he's at 69.5 out there on that book. Let's see where he's at on Prize Picks. So, and Tom Kim for that matter too. Let's look at that. So he's at 69 over here. Jason Day's also at 69 strokes. What is Jason Day on Underdog? He's at 68.5. Well, some slips rate themselves. So we're going to go with this. So, I guess it can't detect my location. Let's fix that. I promise you I'm in Florida, and I'm trying to enter a free slip. Like, come on. I'm not trying to pull a fast one on you out there, Underdog. So let's go with those two. So it's going to be over Tom Kim, over in Jason Day. If you're a plus EV guy, right, only trying to take plus EV props, well, both of those are checked off there, right? They're at higher props, higher numbers, juiced, right, over there on those 2 sports books. And just from the pure classical analysis angle, which is what I do for my stuff, right? I do plus EV stuff every once in a while, but just from the classical analysis, right? You're talking about 2 guys that aren't really hitting the ball that well, right? They're doing it a lot with the putter. And if they're not saving all these 10 to 15 footers for par, you could easily see them, right, kind of leaking some strokes. And with the harder pin locations, I think the scoring average is going to be like 1.5 under par. So someone like 69.5. That means that guys like Tom Kim, Jason Day could have slightly better than average rounds and still not cover this kind of projection. So I still like both for Showdown. I'm actually playing both for the Showdown format, but I'm also fading them out there for props because it's a 50-50 format, right? You're talking about just trying to get it right 50% of the time. And while I think they have upside for fantasy, I'm not so sure for that. Don't need to force anything. I did like those in pick 6, actually. So believe between those props I just took and then what we did on pick 6, I like the pick 6 ones more. So we're actually good there. But yeah, at first, I was kind of struggling for a second, but we found it. If the pins are going to be a little bit harder and Scotty with a later tee time, would you take his strokes over? That'd probably be forced, man. I have a role that I take with Scotty. You don't fade the guy, like ever. You don't fade him for anything. He's that sort of player where he could just go out there and nuke a golf course, even if conditions are hard, let alone if he's going to be playing with pretty low winds. So I probably wouldn't do that, man. Right? He's the world #1 player. I would take a look at some of the other guys that are at like 67.5 and potentially fade them, right? They're not on that same level as Scotty Scheffler. That would be what I do. Cam Young for under pars. Yeah, let me take a look. I honestly don't know how to take the pars one. Like, I've never bet on pars in my life, right? So it's not something that I'm very familiar with. I guess we could just back calculate it, right? So if I think it's going to be like 4 birdies per round and like 2 bogeys per round, that's like 12 non-birdies, right? That you're making per round on average. What do they have him at? Is he at 11.5 or 12.5? So they have all these guys at 11.5. I get what you're saying, right? Cam Young, he makes a lot of birdies and he also bogeys quite often. But the averages are, I'd probably stay away from that one. I agree with you, though. I get what you're saying there, Swoop. Just the average is keeping me a little bit off that one. All right, let's find something on Prize Picks to enter, and then we're going to hop on out of here. So Prize Picks seemingly has some of these strokes a little bit higher, but I want to take a look at is like where they have Akshay. So let's see if they have Batia up. So it doesn't look like they have one on DraftKings. Let's see if they have one on FanDuel. All right, so they don't have Akshay up. That's kind of disappointing. But at 68.5, in theory, he could be a fade. Let's take a look at the greens and the fairways. So greens, oh my God, this is the easiest fade in human history. Ricky Fowler at 12.5. Yep, fade. Absolutely will be fading that one. He's teeing off early, so he's going to have soft conditions, but I'm assuming he's not playing very well with the approach play. I mean, yeah, look at this, right? He's a pretty much a neutral player on approach over the first 2 rounds. Now, I want to double check on his how he's actually done with greens regulation. Oh boy, I don't want to unplug my mic. Got to hit this like a surgeon over here so we don't unplug it. Let's see what he's done green and regulation wise, because I'm genuinely curious there. I know he's not playing well because of his score. It's quite obvious. But let's see what he's working with. All right. So here's the shots gained stuff out there for Ricky Fowler. So he's, again, a slight gainer on approach over the first 2 rounds. Round 1 hit 13. Today hit 13 greens in regulation. So he went over both days. So congrats to him. That's pretty good stuff. He only shot -1, though, which is kind of crazy. The issue I have with it is that he's not a really good approach player, right? He's typically the kind of guy that is like number 50, maybe number 100 on the PGA Tour when it comes to green and regulation percentage, which in this kind of field is about an average player at best, right? And if we go back to the stat averages from before, greens regulation are 11.4 per round. Now, I'm glad I have this band here so I can remember I'm not playing a green and regulation prop. In fact, we're taking it out of the shopping cart immediately. We're not doing that to ourselves. But in theory, this is what I'll say. I'll at least cover this. In theory, these are all too high for greens. They're probably like 1 green too high, maybe 0.5 too high across the board. And the same thing with the fairways, right? The fairway average was like 9.3, and they have like everyone on the board at least 9.5. There's going to be some unders to take, but if you do it with Sam Burns again, you can see they posted them at 9.5, they'll just screw you like we ended up doing for round 2. So I'm glad I caught myself. It's the first round since we instituted the ban. We can't be going out there and betting any of those props. So I guess let's just look at birdies and chokes. Oh boy. I was hoping to find some value there, but it's not worth the risk, guys, right? If they're going to mark these incorrectly, it could go both ways. It could help you out or it could screw you. Like it ended up screwing a lot of us today. Yikes. Yeah, I got to say, this Prize Picks board, not my favorite. I know I mentioned that off the bat before, but at least on Underdog, we were able to find a few props to take. On Prize Picks, it's not looking like that. So if we're going to take fades, we want it to be for players that are playing unsustainably. And I mean, there are guys on here, right, that aren't really doing it with the ball striking stats, but there aren't enough of them to I think, make these slips work. So what we're going to do in here, let's go ahead and sort this by tee to green play again and sort it by the worst tee to green players. So in terms of guys that I know have lines over there on Prize Picks, the first one that shows up here is Jason Day, right? Who's at 69 as opposed to 68.5. So you probably stay away from that. Justin Rose, did he have a line? Let's see. Is Jay Rose up here? No. So no Justin Rose line. I wonder why. It's probably because of how he's playing. Who else? Keegan Bradley. Does Keegan have a line? Keegan actually played pretty well today. But yeah, he doesn't even have a line over there in Prize Picks. This is the issue, right? I was trying to find these guys that I know just aren't playing well with their shots gained tee to green, and none of them are posted on the board. So Denny, I'm not sure if he has a line up there, but double check. Tommy Fleetwood, I know he for sure has a line, so we could take a look at that. So Denny at 69, right? I guess he would be a potential over. Who else do we have? Let's see. Fleetwood at 68.5. What is he at on Underdog? Good old Tommy Ladd. Same projection. Okay, these are just, this is me brainstorming right now. So don't take this as props I'm actually going to take. They don't have Denny McCarthy props posted. Yeah, hell no. They're not going to do that. Tommy Ladd's line over here on the sports books is even money at 68.5. Huh. Okay. What is he on FanDuel if they haven't posted? He's also about even money. Yeah, I don't know, guys. It feels like we're trying to force it in at this point, doesn't it? Like the other sites, like everything kind of fell into place. Now we're just kind of trying to scrape something in. Yeah, this board, unless we end up getting like hole props, like hole 2, I know they might post something for like hole number 9 out there for moving day. It would not surprise me to see like an over under 3.5 out there for hole number 9. That might be the best spot to get some exposure. Now, 5.5 birdies for Scotty, that might be a little bit high. Like I wouldn't even be against potentially fading that. In fact, that might be a spot to take. So let's at least leave that one in there. We could try and fade some leaders. So they don't have a lot of the leaders up here for strokes, but they have a few of them up here. So like Patrick Rogers at 69 strokes. Who else could we take as a fade for a leader? Poston, right, at 69 strokes, right? He was going out there luck sacking it a little bit. So I know I mentioned probably not fading Scotty because he's an absolute god. Now, 5.5 birdies is pretty high. If there's a line to fade, it's 5.5 birdies for anybody, right? Even out there for Scotty Scheffler. But the two props that I think probably make the most sense would be these two, right? Patrick Rogers and a JT Poston over. Now, on the sports books, I believe they have them posted, but they're at 69.5. Both of them are juiced towards the under. Like you can see JT Poston here, right? He's minus 140 towards the under, but he's still at 69.5 strokes, right? So he's still 0.5 higher. And the push equity at 69, I think makes a little bit of sense. I'm going to make this a 3-man though, because if you do a 2-man and one pushes, you get absolutely screwed on the payout. Like you get nothing in terms of payout. So it's making a 3-man in case one pushes so that we're not getting like 1.3x back, because that is just atrocious. I guess we could fade Sep. All right, for the sake of the live stream, this is going to be the slip that we do. I'm not 100% certain this is something I'm going to relay to my Patreons quite yet. I still want to do a little bit more research, but Poston, I know for a fact I want to fade. Let's look at the shots gained metrics for Rogers and Straka, because that's the real determiner for me. So round 2 in particular, right, you can see that JT Poston lost off the tee and on approach. Let's look at Sepp Straka. So Straka still gained on approach, and Patrick Rogers also gained on approach. So they're getting it done, right? But at the same time, this is not what they're used to doing. And they're not gaining a bunch of strokes there, right? Like all 3 players are gaining with the putter, right? Somebody like Straka is getting 2.3 strokes around the green. And I can tell you that Straka is usually one of the worst players around the green in the field. So that's very atypical. And then Patrick Rogers over here, he's gaining a bunch off the tee, which is something he can do, but he is not a prolific off the tee player. And he's also doing it with the flat stick. I really like the Straka fade because that around the green is going to come back down to earth. JT Poston, I really like the fade because the guy's not hitting greens for his life. And then the Rogers one is maybe a little bit sketchier because he is ball striking it well, but he's an absolute slapdick. Like Patrick Rogers is just he's not a top tier player out here on the PGA Tour, right? There's a reason why he's been around forever. He's been in contention a bunch of times, but has never won, right? He'll have a good first few rounds, and then over the weekend, he shows his true hand. So I'm not trying to talk shit about these players in particular. In fact, I like Sepp. I love his caddy out there on tour, but these are 3 spots that I have to be considering the over on. So we'll take those 3 for right now, and that'll probably be it for the live stream. But let's see what you guys got for questions. Harris English for birdies or better matchup. So who is he against? I guess is the question, right? Or who is he playing against, Harris English? Did you list who he's going against? I don't see Harris English up here, boss. Am I blind? Yeah, I don't see a Harris English birdie or better matchup. So I would, I guess, let me know if I'm just not seeing it on here, but I don't think they have that up, man. Last one is Jason Day, 69 strokes. No, I'm taking him over 68 and a half. So I definitely wouldn't take him under 69. Poston is 68 and a half on pick 6. Then take that. Yeah. I liked the other fades more that I took, but we took what, under 4.5 birdies for a lot of those players. Like, I prefer that for Patrick Rogers, but you could also take that strokes line too. Like, I don't think that's a bad spot. The lines over here in pick 6, by the way, are always extremely soft. They're usually really far off compared to the other sites. So if I had access to DK pick 6, Underdog, and Prize Picks, a majority of my money would be on the pick 6 stuff. Like this, I would just be on here all day entering slips, frankly, if I could, especially fades down here on some of these strokes lines. Like Bryce Garnett at 68 and a half. Like, I know I didn't point this one out before, but like, what the fuck? How the hell is he at 2.5 under par for a projection? So yeah, man, I would be abusing the ever living fuck out of this pick 6 board. In fact, I wish I lived in a state that had it because I'd be going off. So they took him off the board. Okay. I was going to say, am I blind or something? Like, what's going on there? Who is he against? You've got Scotty under 5.5 and you're fading JT for Prize Picks. Yeah, I think you could do it, man. Now, Scotty, right, you're playing with fire there, taking an under 5.5. But I think I've seen crazier things happen before. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for this live stream. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared out there for your moving day action. The last thing I'll leave you guys with here is our plug for Ship It Nation, which I know I mentioned it before, our sponsor for these live streams. But if you don't just want to take a look at my Patreon projections, which of course, right, we go through here on the live streams, you guys, a lot of you down in the live chat already have access to it. Make sure to check out Ship It Nation. They not only have all these other sports, but what I wanted to focus on for today's action was their PGA and their MMA stuff. For PGA, obviously, they cover all the Showdown stuff that I do, right? They have their ownership projections, projected points, player pools with Hoop and Tambo on there. Also, extra content on top of that in their Discord that they're posting for every single slate, but also a lot of MMA stuff. And I'm not sure who's fighting tomorrow. And like I said for last week, right? It doesn't matter if I know what I'm doing for MMA DFS. If I have projections like I can trust, like we have here with Ship It Nation. So it doesn't look like we have a UFC card this weekend. So that's how you can tell how out of touch I am with UFC, that I don't even know if we have fights this weekend. But the thing I love about what they do, and they do have another big card next weekend. So if you're joining Ship It for MMA, I think next weekend would be a good time to do it. But they're doing a whole set of fights, and it's a lot of lower tier fighters. So it's headlined by Nicolau and Alex Perez. Your next fight, like Ryan Span's a bigger name, but like Bogdan Guskov, you have Lipsky versus Silva. Like, this isn't like the UFC 300 card where like we know all the fighters, right? This is the kind of slate where, frankly, as a MMA casual like myself, I'm going to have no idea what the hell to do. So when we're going through these projections next weekend, we're going to have a whole segment for next Friday out there in our round 2 live stream. We go through some of our projections and find some of their top plays over there. So I trust the team over there a lot because they're actually taking down GPPs when it comes to playing PGA DFS. And again, they have that golf stuff on there. So if you're just here for golf, I know a lot of you guys are, make sure to check them out for that. Use code Luke15 if you're signing up. You get a 15% discount, and that puts golf at just $33 per month. So on there, you'll get all that stuff from Hoop and Tambo, which again, I really respect the stuff that I do. I really respect the stuff that Ship It Nation does. Frankly, I think you should be a member of both sites. They have their own advantages, right? People have their own parts of the process that they're better at than other people. So I think leaning into that, right, taking other people's perspectives, opinions, and weighing them is a good way to go out there and have your process. Like, I know we had that conversation before where I was talking about flying the flag and having your own process. I think that's key, right? Not just looking at one person's sets of projections and really get an idea for where the entire industry is coming in. So that's something that I used to do when I wasn't a content creator myself. I was a member at like 5 or 6 different fantasy sites. So first off, I get a better idea of ownership projections, but also just some of the better plays, right? People are going to have spots that they're sharper on than other people. And I think the more the merrier when it comes to DFS. So that's all I've got here for this live stream, guys. Wanted to go ahead and hit you guys with the promo before we got out of here. But I appreciate all the support here on the channel as per usual. Smash that like button if you haven't already. And give me your top score out there for round 3 showdown. So if you made it this far into the live stream, you made it to the giveaway segment of the video for a free chance to earn a month of my Patreon page. Give me the top score overall. So it'll just be pure strokes. Whoever goes the lowest out there for tomorrow, if you can get that golfer, and there's only one you can only take it once, right? So if somebody takes the golfer down there in live chat, they cannot be taken again. Give me the lowest score out there for moving day, and you win a free month of my Patreon. On there, of course, is where I'm posting all my prop analysis, all the different props that I'm taking. And over there for the DFS side is where I'm posting all the spreadsheets that you see throughout the content. So on there, that's where I have my own ship projections and player pool, right? Just like you guys can get over there for the Ship It Nation stuff. So join Ship It Nation. Use code Luke15 for that discount if you haven't already. And then for a free chance to earn a month on my Patreon page, give me your thoughts on your top scorer. So if it's down here in live chat, you can go ahead and claim it now. If you're watching this on replay, you can throw it down in the comments. Just make sure that somebody in live chat didn't take that player from you, and you'll be good to go out there. So appreciate you guys. Best of luck out there, Dave, and have you guys a moving day.